Imagine that your perfect marriage is a lie. That your husband is hiding not a mistress, but something far more terrifying. A secret that will change your life. Or take it. A deception that cannot be forgiven. A scandal that defies all common sense. And a truth that will have to be paid for in blood. Are you ready to discover what lies on the other side of a perfect marriage? Then buckle up. It will be terrifying. So, let's begin. The Price of Truth. Chapter 1. The Scent of Another. Amy sensed it the moment he walked in. The air quivered, saturated with an unfamiliar scent, spicy, with a hint of vanilla and a barely perceptible bitterness. A foreign fragrance that disrupted the familiar coziness of their home. She chopped vegetables with measured motions, but inside, everything tightened like a taut string. "How was your day?" Her voice was soft, yet steel lurked beneath. "Awful." Mike tossed his keys onto the console, slumping. "Tired. Goddamn tired." She felt his gaze but didn't turn around. The blade of the knife glinted in the lamplight. "Were you at a restaurant?" A casual question. Almost innocent. Mike froze for a second, as if hearing something more in her words. Then he smirked, "Yes. With clients." "Why do you ask?" Amy leaned slightly closer to the cutting board, inhaling the scent. He smelled not just of cologne. Something else. Cigarette smoke. She knew he hated smoke. Someone else's fingers had touched his shirt. Someone he'd let get too close. She smiled and flipped the knife in her hand. Just curious, her voice light, like a sea breeze before a storm. Mike's eyes skimmed her face, but he noticed nothing. He didn't see that he'd already become the target of a hunt. Amy wouldn't make a scene. No hysterics. She would unravel it slowly, layer by layer, like a surgeon performing an autopsy. What she'd find might be far more terrifying than mere infidelity. Chapter 2. Cracks in the Mirror. The night was surprisingly quiet. Mike fell asleep almost as soon as his head hit the pillow, while Amy lay awake, staring into the darkness. Her thoughts were shards of glass, sharp, chaotic. She sifted through every detail in her mind like a detective at a crime scene. At 2 a.m., she rose, slipped silently into the bathroom, and pulled his shirt from the laundry basket. The scent clung to the fabric like a sealed imprint. Amy inhaled deeply. Perfume. Floral, but with a trace of Eastern spices. Not cheap. She turned on her phone and opened social media. Among his followers were the usual faces. Colleagues, friends, distant relatives. But one name caught her attention. The account was private, but the profile picture, a tiny black and white photo of a woman's silhouette by a window, made her heart tighten. Her hand trembled as she tapped the profile. "Who are you? How long have you been near him? Why you?" Amy felt a cold shiver run down her spine. The answers were waiting for her. All she had to do was start digging. Chapter 3. Shards of the Past. Amy hadn't slept a wink until dawn. A single word pulsed in her mind, dig. She threw on a robe and went downstairs to the kitchen. Coffee didn't help, but it offered the illusion of clarity. Mike's public profile revealed nothing, but she knew everyone had a shadow online. A second life hidden behind passwords and deleted messages. She logged into his laptop. The password hadn't changed. Emails, calendar, all ordinary. But then she opened the photos folder. There, among work snapshots and old family photos, was something else. A new folder. Created 3 weeks ago. She clicked it open. Her heart slammed against her ribs. Photos. blurry, as if taken in haste. A woman with long hair, wearing a coat, exiting a building. The city at night, dim streets. In one shot, her reflection in a cafe window. Amy leaned closer. Her hand tightened around the mug. She knew that face. Chapter 4. A face from the past. Amy froze, staring intently at the screen. She knew this woman. A face that had once been part of her life now stared back from the photograph. Lana. A friend. No, a former friend. They hadn't spoken in years, too much left unsaid, too many grievances never given a name. Their friendship had ended abruptly, leaving behind a void filled only with guesses. And now Lana was here. In a folder on her husband's laptop. Amy felt a cold, slippery dread coiling inside her. This wasn't just an affair. This was something deeper, something with roots buried in the past. She closed the laptop and sat up straighter. A mechanism clicked in her mind, as if shutting one door and opening another. This was no longer just suspicion. This was a game. And she intended to play it to the end. She picked up her phone, scrolled through her contacts. Lana's number was still there. Her finger hovered over the screen. Call. Text. Or just watch for now. Mike slept upstairs, unaware that his little secret had just begun to morph into a storm. Amy smiled. She knew where to begin. Chapter 5. The first move. Amy didn't call. That would have been too easy. Instead, she began to watch. In the morning, while Mike showered, she searched his car. The glove compartment, armrest, all suspiciously clean. Too clean. But on the floor, wedged between the seat and the door, she found what she was looking for, a tiny, almost invisible hairpin. Not hers. Lana used to wear these when they were younger. A coincidence? Amy clenched the hairpin in her palm. Now she had a lead. That afternoon, she visited the cafe where she and Lana used to spend evenings talking. The waitress, who clearly didn't recognize her, took her order. But when Amy mentioned Lana's name, the girl's expression shifted slightly. Lana? Yeah, she comes here often. Usually in the evenings. With a man, the waitress hesitated, tall, with dark hair. Amy smiled, though her insides twisted. Does he dress well? Yes, always in an expensive suit. The girl shrugged. They seem close. It was expected, yet no less painful. Amy took a slow sip of coffee. Good. Now she had a location. Now all she had to do was wait for the right moment. Chapter 6. The Uninvited Guest. Amy didn't have to wait long. The next evening, she took a table by the window at the same cafe. Her cappuccino grew cold in her hands as her eyes kept darting to the entrance. Then they walked in. Mike and Lana. They passed by without noticing her. Amy forced herself to watch calmly, even as he leaned too close to Lana, whispered something, and she laughed softly. That laugh, she remembered it too well. The laugh of a friend. Or now, a rival. Amy pulled out her phone and took a photo. Not for blackmail. Not yet. Just as proof. To herself. Because until this moment, part of her had still hoped it was a mistake. When the waitress brought the check, Amy left a tip and walked out. She didn't wait for them to spot her. No, the rules of this game now belonged to her. That night, she didn't sleep. Instead, she sat at her computer and dug deeper. Bank records. Financial statements. Transactions. It didn't take long to find what shouldn't have been there. Transfers to an unknown account. Large sums. Regular. A chill crawled over Amy's skin. This wasn't just infidelity. Chapter 7. The shadow behind. Amy couldn't just let it go. She decided to find out who owned the account. But her skills weren't enough to hack into the banking system. She knew who to call. "Hi, Zach. I need your help." Zach was an old friend, the kind who could always dig up information no one was supposed to see. They hadn't spoken in years, but their bond had never weakened. "Amy? Long time no hear. What's wrong? I need to trace a bank account. Can you do it?" Silence hung on the other end. "You know this could land us in prison, right?" Zach finally said. "I know. But it's important." A sigh. Then a short reply, "Send me the details." She sent him the records, then closed her laptop. Now all she could do was wait. But waiting was harder than she'd imagined. Late that night, when the house had fallen silent, Amy heard a noise. Faint. Almost imperceptible. A rustle outside the window. Her heart tightened. She slowly rose from the chair, careful not to make a sound, and moved toward the window. Gently, she pushed the curtain aside. Darkness. An empty street. But she felt it. Someone was there. Someone was watching. Chapter 8. Ghosts in the dark. Amy held her breath, peering into the night. Was it just the wind rustling leaves? Or had a shadow flickered behind the tree across the street? Suddenly, her phone lit up. A message from Zach. "Someone really doesn't want you to know the truth. The account traces back to an offshore company linked to Mike. But that's not all. You're in trouble." Amy's fingers tightened around the phone. Trouble? She already knew that. She took a step back, moving away from the window. Something crunched in the darkness behind her. Another sound. The creak of a floorboard near the front door. Someone was inside. Amy froze, her heart plummeting. Silently, she slid toward the kitchen. There, on the counter, lay a knife. Her fingers closed around the cold steel in her palm. A shadow darted down the hallway. Someone was heading toward the stairs. Amy gripped the knife tighter. It was time to learn who she was playing against. Chapter 9. Uninvited Visitor. Amy stood in the dark, clutching the knife. Her breathing slowed, her hearing sharpened. Every sound in the house now seemed deafening. Footsteps. Slow, cautious. They neared the stairs, then stopped. Someone was listening. Amy pressed her lips together. If she could hear the intruder, he could hear her too. The silence stretched. The house seemed frozen in tense anticipation. Then, movement. Quick, sharp. Someone lunged toward the back door. Amy dashed after them but was too late. The door swung open, night air rushing in. A figure flickered beyond the threshold, vanishing into shadows. She wanted to chase the silhouette, but something stopped her. An inner voice, instinct, whispering, "Be careful." Amy shut the door, locked it, and took a deep breath. Now she knew she was being watched. Her phone vibrated in her hand. A new message from Zach. "Get out. Now." Amy felt fear give way to cold realization. She hadn't just uncovered Mike's secret. She'd gone too deep. Chapter 10. Evidence in the dark. Amy stared at the screen, her insides coiling tight. Zach didn't panic without reason. He knew more than he'd let on. The house was thick with silence. Only the ticking clock marked time's relentless march. Her gaze slid to the floor near the back door. Then she saw it. Footprints. Faint, damp, leading into the house. The figure hadn't just vanished into the night. It had been here. Inside. And left unhurried. Amy swallowed. Fleeing made sense, but where? What if they were waiting outside? She dialed Zach. "Talk," she whispered. "Listen carefully," his voice was low, strained. "Those transfers I traced. Mike isn't just hiding money. He's funding something, or someone. And it's not an affair." Amy gripped the phone harder. "Then who?" A pause on the line. "Got a pen? Write this address down. And tell no one you're going there." She grabbed the nearest scrap of paper, unaware this address would unravel everything she knew about her husband. Chapter 11. Beyond the known. Amy wrote down the address with a trembling hand. Nothing familiar. No street, no neighborhood she recognized. What could be there? "Zach, are you sure?" Her voice sounded weaker than she'd intended. "Absolutely. But you need to be careful. If Mike's tied to this place, it's dangerous." Amy nodded as if he could see her. Questions swarmed her mind, but fear gave way to another emotion, resolve. She grabbed her jacket and keys, slipped out of the house, and got into the car. The nighttime city was empty, only occasional headlights slicing through the dark. The address led her to the outskirts, an industrial zone, rusted hangars, old warehouses. She parked the car blocks away. The rest was on foot. The silence here was different, thick, suffocating. As she approached the building, her heart clenched and dropped to her heels. Light. Someone was inside. Amy hid in the shadows, straining to see. Through a grimy window, silhouettes moved. One of them shifted, tall, deliberate. She knew that silhouette. Mike. Her breath caught. The questions multiplied. What was he doing here in the dead of night? Who were these people with him? And why did she suddenly feel she'd crossed a line with no way back? Chapter 12. The Unseen Circle. Amy couldn't tear her eyes away from the window. Inside, behind the grimy glass, Mike was speaking to someone whose face she couldn't see. Gestures sharp, like an argument. Another figure stood farther back, nearly merging with the shadows. Who were they? Amy pulled out her phone, but before she could snap a photo or record, the lights inside went out. The once lit room became an ink-black void. She froze. A chill ran down her spine. If the lights were cut deliberately, someone knew they were being watched. Amy stepped back, moving silently. The air hung thick, reeking of dampness and rust. She was about to leave when she caught movement in her peripheral vision. The warehouse door creaked open slowly. A dark figure stepped out. Amy pressed herself against the wall, holding her breath. The figure paused, listening. As if sensing her presence. The phone in her pocket vibrated. Amy shut her eyes. If it rang, she'd give herself away. The figure took a step toward her. Amy didn't know what terrified her more, running or staying. Chapter 13. Trapped. The figure froze just steps away. Amy pressed against the wall, feeling her heart pound heavily in her chest. The silence pressed down, stretched thin, becoming unbearable. She inched backward, careful not to step on anything treacherously loud. The figure didn't move, but she felt its gaze, heavy, probing. Then, a sound. A click. The warehouse door swung open again, and another person stepped out. Confident, measured steps this time. Is someone here? The voice was low, slightly raspy. Amy curled tighter. Every instinct screamed, if they found her, there'd be no way back. The dark figure slowly turned toward her. 5 meters between them. One more step, and she'd be seen. At that moment, an engine roared nearby, headlights flooding the alley. The two by the warehouse spun sharply, attention diverted. Amy didn't wait. She whirled and ran, refusing to wonder if they heard her. Blood pulsed in her ears, breath ragged. Angular shadows of buildings flashed by, turning her escape into chaos. Shouts erupted behind her, they'd spotted her. Amy veered around a corner, heart hammering. A metal door loomed ahead. She yanked the handle, locked. The next door, locked. Another, locked. Panic swelled. Where to hide? A grated staircase leading to the roof stood a few steps away, shrouded in darkness. No other escape. She gripped the icy railing and climbed, knowing the game had just shifted to far deadlier rules. Chapter 14. Height without choice. Amy climbed higher, the metal rungs burning her palms with cold. Footsteps and voices echoed from below. Someone was heading for the staircase too. Reaching the roof, she caught her breath. Wind lashed her face, sharp, merciless. Ahead lay an endless maze of pipes, vents, and satellite dishes. Nowhere to run, but staying still was worse. The footsteps on the stairs quickened. Amy rushed to the roof's edge, peering into the darkness. A 3-meter gap separated this building from the next. The height terrified her, but there was no choice. From behind came a shout, "Stop!" A sharp, commanding voice. But Amy had already stepped back. And jumped. Air tore through her, a second of flight stretched into eternity. Pain shot through her legs, a sharp impact against concrete. She rolled forward, cushioning the fall. Her skin burned with scrapes, but she was alive. Curses erupted behind her. Her pursuers hadn't expected this. Amy scrambled up and bolted forward, weaving between vents and jagged structures without looking back. Salvation lay somewhere below, but how to reach it? Her peripheral vision caught a fire escape descending into the courtyard's impenetrable gloom. It might be her only chance to vanish into the night and escape their sight. Chapter 15. Into the dark. Amy darted toward the staircase and, without wasting a second, began her descent. The cold metal burned her fingers, the steps slick with moisture, but fear drove her faster than the danger of falling. Voices above grew louder. Someone leaned over the roof's edge, sweeping the courtyard with a flashlight beam. Amy pressed into the shadows, holding her breath. The light grazed the wall but missed her. 3 flights down. Almost there. A step creaked underfoot. The noise sliced through the silence, and the flashlight jerked toward her. There. A voice shouted. Amy leaped to the ground, rolled, and sprinted toward the courtyard exit. Footsteps pounded behind her, but she didn't look back. The narrow passage spilled onto a deserted street. Streetlights were dead, only distant neon signs flickered. The night hit her, but did it hide her from them? To hide, to pause for even a second, and she'd lose. Ahead, a figure emerged, a man's silhouette, standing as if waiting for her. Amy skidded to a halt. Her heart thundered so loudly she feared even those behind could hear it. Who was he? And why did it feel like he wasn't here by chance? Chapter 16. The inevitable clash. Amy froze, staring into the shadow. The man didn't move, but his posture exuded confidence. He knew she'd see him. Knew she had no way back. Footsteps echoed behind her. Her pursuers were closing in. "Don't be afraid," he said, stepping forward. His voice was low, calm. Too calm. Amy stepped back. Few options remained: run back, into the hands of her pursuers, or risk confronting the one who waited. "Who are you?" Her voice dropped to a whisper. He didn't answer immediately. His gaze swept over her, assessing, as if checking for injuries. "I'm the one who can help, if you trust me," he finally said. "But your time to decide is up." A furious shout erupted behind her. They'd been spotted. The man took another step, and at that moment, a car emerged from the darkness. Black, unmarked. The door clicked open as the car halted. Amy didn't know if this was a trap, but one thing was clear: there was no time to choose. The man reached out a hand. "Run if you want. Or get in if you want to live." Amy cast a final glance at the approaching shadows and made her choice. Chapter 17. Inside the trap. Amy stepped forward and climbed into the car. The door slammed shut, sealing her off from the outside world. The man slid in beside her, and the car lurched forward, tires screeching as it sped away. "Who are they?" Amy asked, eyes fixed on the window where sparse streetlights flickered. "Better you don't know," he replied flatly. "For now." Her heart still raced, but fear was giving way to unease and suspicion. She shifted her gaze to the driver, tall, lean, with sharp features. His eyes never left the road. "Where are we going?" Amy clenched her fists, ready to fight if needed. "Somewhere safe," the man beside her said, tilting his head slightly. "For now, at least." She opened her mouth to ask more, but the driver suddenly swerved into a narrow alley. Headlights illuminated aged brick walls. Ahead, another car was parked by a side entrance to an unmarked building. "Time's up," the man said calmly. "Get out." Amy didn't move. "If I step out, what happens next? Either you start getting answers, or you'll regret ever asking questions." He opened the door, waiting for her choice. Chapter 18. A choice without choice. Amy glanced back. The street was still empty, but that wouldn't last. Those chasing her wouldn't stop. She took a deep breath and stepped out. The air was cool, smelling of wet asphalt and something metallic. The man gestured toward the door. "Hurry." She hesitated only a moment, then entered. Inside was dimly lit. A corridor stretched deep into the building, old wires snaking along the walls. The man stepped in behind her, and the door thudded shut. "You trusted me," his voice came from behind. "So you're ready for the truth?" Amy turned. Shadows hid his face, but his voice remained steady, almost emotionless. "I have no idea who you are," her voice wavered, "and I'm not sure I want to." He took a step closer. Now his eyes glinted in the faint lamplight. "But you'll ask anyway." Amy clenched her fists. "Why are they after me?" The man looked at her with a faint smirk. "Because you got too close to the truth. And the truth is something they can't let you know." Muffled footsteps sounded beyond the door. Someone was approaching. "Too late," he whispered. "They're already here." Chapter 19. The Trap. Amy stepped back until her shoulders hit the cold wall. Footsteps behind the door grew louder. The man across from her stood motionless, as if he'd known what would happen next all along. "Who are they?" She asked again, but silence was her only answer. The door suddenly burst open, and three figures stormed in. Masks covered their faces, their movements precise, professional. One stepped forward, aiming what looked like a stun gun at her. "Move," he ordered coldly. Amy froze. The man who'd brought her here didn't even try to intervene. He just watched. "You knew they'd come," she whispered, fists clenched. "You were working for them." The man tilted his head like a predator studying prey. "I merely gave you a choice." "What choice?" Her voice cracked into an angry whisper. He stepped closer, almost brushing her face. "To trust me. Or uncover the truth yourself." Before she could process his words, one of the masked men pulled out a syringe. The needle glinted in the dim light. Amy lunged sideways, but strong hands grabbed her. She screamed as the needle pierced her neck. The world began dissolving into darkness. The last thing she heard was the man's voice, "Now you'll see it all. But you'll regret wanting to know." Chapter 20. The Dark Truth. Amy woke to the sharp sting of antiseptic. A headache clamped her mind, her body felt paralyzed. She tried to move, but her wrists and ankles were strapped down. The metal table chilled her like ice, seeping into her soul. "Awake?" came the familiar voice. Amy turned her head. The man who'd lured her into the trap stood nearby. His face was shadowed, but mockery laced his tone. "What did you do to me?" she rasped. "Nothing you didn't want." He leaned closer. "You thought you were chasing your husband's mistress. You were wrong. All this time, you've been hunting yourself." Amy frowned. Suddenly, a tinted glass panel in the wall slid open, revealing a bedroom. Her bedroom. A woman sat on the bed, an exact copy of Amy. And across from her stood her husband. "This isn't possible," she whispered. The man smirked. "The truth is always darker than it seems. You're not who you think you are. Now you choose, learn it all. Or disappear." The screen went black. The restraints clanked open. Amy struggled to sit up. Her heart raced wildly. Her world crumbled, leaving one question: who was she really? Want to uncover the secret behind this mystery? Subscribe, like, and comment below with your theories about Amy's true identity. The next chapter drops soon. Don't miss it.